a little bit just to see if there's any students who are or community members who are still making their way to the thing. But hopefully they all got the link. I know all my students did anyways. But this is the first of the talks for this term sponsored by the Ethnic and Gender Studies Institute. So we'll be doing 3 of these talks. This is our first one. We have one in October and one in November as well. That I'll speak a little bit about at the end. So our first presenter is Jowana Burgan. She is an engineering student at York University, and she's just going to speak a little bit about some of her experiences and what she does with her life. If you have any questions for Ms. Burgan, you can type them in at the Q&A function down at the bottom of the screen or in the chat, because I don't think any of you will be able to speak. So those are going to be the way that we'll communicate any questions or comments, and I'll kind of shepherd those towards her at the end of the discussion. So welcome, Jowana.
Thank you guys for having me. Let me just share my screen quickly with you guys. Awesome. Can you see everything? PowerPoint?
Yes.
It's working. Awesome. Perfect. Okay. So thank you for having me. I'm really, really excited to be here today. Before I want to tell you more about myself, I just want to actually start off by giving you an example of a situation that happens to me often. Whenever I meet people and they ask me what my passion is and I tell them it's modeling, their feedback is very positive, and you can tell that they truly believe that I'm good at modeling. And then I keep telling them about working on cars and how I teach people the basic maintenance of cars, and I wish you guys can see their faces because it's full of doubt and questions, and I feel like if I was a male, then there would be a lot less uncertainty. And I feel like that's the huge problem with gender norms and the gender inequality in our society. And if I were to ever let those people get to me, I don't think I would be who I am today, and I wouldn't be even here presenting to you guys. So let me reintroduce myself. My name is Jowana Burgan. I'm a 22-year-old mechanical engineering student. My hobbies are pole fitness and basketball, and my passion is modeling and working on cars. Now, I was born in Jordan in the Middle East, so our first language is Arabic. I lived there for the first 12 years of my life, and then my dad in 2010 wanted to move us to Canada for better education and to get our citizenship. So as an immigrant, I think every immigrant goes through the same emotional roller coaster. And I wanted to share that with you guys just so you can get a bit of an understanding of everything of the process of moving countries. So initially, we're all anxious about leaving our home country, our family behind, and coming to a completely different place. And then we're a little bit also excited to start a new journey. But then there's a huge cultural shock between Jordan and Canada. And a small example of that is the LGBT community here. You can find a lot of that in Jordan. It's not widely very acceptable. So that was the cultural shock here. There's a lot of other stuff, but that was just a small example. Then you have the superficial adjustment, and that's like convincing yourself that you're adjusting here and liking it. And obviously through all these years, you have the depression and frustration stage. And I had that for about my first 5 to 6 years in Canada. And my parents actually ended up signing me up in modeling in my second year to help me adapt. And that really helped me kind of become more confident, happier, and truly find something that I like to do in a new country. So that's why modeling is a huge part of who I am today. It's helped me adapt a lot into Canada. And after that phase of depression, frustration, you slowly start to accept the host culture and integrate your life with everything else. So I added the last part myself, which is the being confused, because I've almost spent half my life in Jordan and the other half in Canada. So I'm a little bit confused as where I want to spend my future, because I do have my family back home, but I do have my career started here. But I will let my career kind of guide me along the way. And I do love Canada. It's given me a lot of opportunity, and doing what I do here, it wouldn't have happened. We wouldn't have even gone this big if I've done it in Jordan. So I am thankful for that. Now, before I start, I do want to tell you that nothing about the past 10 years have been easy here, but I do want to show you that with hard work and being persistent, that anything can happen. And my story does highlight some immigration challenges, language barriers, academic challenges, and I'll talk to you a little bit about the Girls Mechanic team and the idea that women really have to prove themselves in the skilled trade industry. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, but when I first moved to Canada, I was in grade 8. So that was my first year here, and English was my second language. So I understood a little bit, but I was not fluent in it. So not being fluent wasn't really helpful for me when I couldn't express my personality properly, so I wasn't able to make friends. And I remember I would be taken out of class once a day with a private teacher who taught me English one-on-one. And throughout the end of the year, she was preparing me to go into grade 9. And in Canada, grade 9 is a completely different school called high school. I'm not sure if it's the same thing in the States, but high school is basically from grade 9 through 12. And she was telling me that she was going to put me into high school as an ESL student, and that's English as a second language student. And I remember asking her if I would be separated from other students in the class. And she reassured me saying that that wouldn't be the case. So I graduated from grade 8, going into grade 9. I was super excited to start a fresh start. Like, my English improved so much. I now can finally make friends. And I go into my first class of ESL, and it turns out that all my classes were actually separate from all the other students, because they were ESL, so the teacher is different and they go on a much slower pace. But and I soon realized too that ESL students fall under the derogatory term called FOBs, fresh off the boat, which really wasn't helpful into making friends. Imagine being classified into a category just based on your language barrier that completely segregated you from the mainstream students. So that did not help me in making friends. I was in ESL from grade 9 through 12. When I finally got out of ESL, it was a bit too late to make friends since people had already formed a group of friends. So at that point, to me, it was already the least of my worries to make friends. I was over high school by that time. I was just looking forward to graduate so I can go into university and finally get the real start that I was looking for since grade 8. So in grade 12, I applied for mechanical engineering, and a lot of people ask me why I chose mechanical. And the answer is pretty simple. In my culture, it's generally accepted to go into either business, law, medicine, and engineering. And I chose mechanical because it was the best thing that I could relate to, since at that time, all I knew is I liked fixing things and I liked hands-on work. Now, my dad stayed back in Jordan, so it was me, my mom, and my sister that lived in Canada. And it was typically me who had to fix everything that broke in the house. And that's where I got to learn that I truly liked the hands-on work. So that's why I went into mechanical. I chose a university that is away from home, so I had to live on campus. And starting university, I was very hopeful. And then a few months into university, I started to realize how difficult my program is. In engineering, the high school does not prepare you for the way education is in university. You're kind of on your own pace. You can go to class or not. You're not really forced into anything. And everything depends on your work ethic. And at that time, my work ethic was not that good. So a few months later, I was unhappy. My grades were not good at all. It was very difficult to kind of be on my own and make friends. And it was the first time that I lived away from home as well. So having the responsibility of taking care of yourself was a huge aspect. So with everything, and my program gave me the pressure of having to land internships. So for my program, I have to finish 12 months of work experience before I graduate, which means every summer I had to get a job for 4 months. And with no grades, no good grades, at least to show companies, and having absolutely no connection in the field, I had no idea what to do. So I started to reach out to upper year students. And the best thing that they told me was that your grades don't matter. It's all about the connections that you guys have. So you yourself might experience that at this point of your life. And for me, I had no family, extended family, at least here, that were in my field to help me get a job. So I had no idea what to do. And in February of my first year, I ended up going to the International Auto Show because I was into cars and I wanted to see the latest technology in cars. And I remember walking around the auto show and thinking to myself how working here would be a great opportunity for me to meet somebody that can help me get a job. So I ended up asking to speak to a manager there as I was looking around, and it happens that she actually ended up firing somebody that day and needed a replacement as soon as possible. So she ended up hiring me, actually interviewing me on the spot, and I ended up getting the job on the same day. And it was called the brand ambassador job. So we basically showcased the cars, and I worked for Mercedes specifically. And through that job experience, it was only 1 week long because that's how long the actual show was. I actually ended up meeting a mentor, Christian, his name is Christian, who helped me find my first internship. And I will forever be thankful for him because he really helped me really understand how to find jobs and, building my resume and everything. So he was a huge help in my life. And after that, I landed my first internship, and I finished it for the first summer, and I went back to school. But this experience to me really taught me that, your circumstances cannot be excused to your failure. You're always in control of the circumstances, no matter how difficult they get. But it's about how hard you work for what you want and being persistent. I never thought I would have landed a job. I just wanted to talk to a manager and easily just ask how people get jobs there. So I know sometimes it's easier said than done, but I don't think that hard work ever goes unrewarded. So just keep that in mind when you're trying to look for something that's like very difficult to land, a job to land, or an opportunity to get. So I finished my internship and I went back to school, and I kept working hard to get my grades better, but it just was not happening. My grades weren't getting any better. I knew that, I tried my best. I know people say that you have to keep working hard, but I did my best and my grades weren't doing good. So I decided at that point, at the end of my second year, that I want to transfer universities somewhere closer to home so I can live with my mom and sister, so they can help me with everything. And I'm in the same program, so it shouldn't be that hard. But it turns out that transferring universities, especially in engineering, your credits do not get transferred over. There's only a specific set of credits or limit that it gets accepted to be transferred. So out of my 20 courses, my first 2 years, only 6 courses were transferred. But to me, that didn't matter. All I wanted to be is closer to home. And so I did what I had to do, and I transferred schools and had to repeat back to year 1. And I just want to share with you to explain how sometimes happiness can really affect the way you perform in life without you even realizing it. And my grades were a huge example of that. On the left side, you can see here my grades in my first universities were D+, C, A-, C, D+, A-, D+, C. Like, it was all just D's and C's. And in the university that I'm in currently, the bottom courses are my first year courses, and you can see how much they've improved drastically just because I was much happier. And yes, I still get some C's. It's not a perfect transcript, but it just shows that, sometimes if happiness is really your priority, that you really need to follow what your heart think is the best choices. So that was my transcripts before and after. And I started my new university at York University, closer to home. And ever since I started there, everything's gone better. And I remember after my first year, I also had to still land an internship. And my first connection was very helpful, but I wasn't able to land an internship the second summer. So I ended up getting a part-time job at the gym. And I remember through that job, my manager asking me, what is it that truly makes me happy? What is it that I do that really makes me excited to do it or happy? And I told him then that I really liked doing hands-on work, fixing things and working on cars. And I remember going home that day, and that's exactly the day the girls mechanic team idea came to my mind. So what I ended up doing is I got 4 of my close best friends. I forced them to sit in meetings with me to learn the basics. Some were interested in cars, others weren't, but they had to do it because I was forcing them to. I YouTube things with them. I also went to my mechanic who taught me a lot of things. And through the help of my friends, so I started this in May 2018. In June, I decided to open my workshops to the public for free. So I said to myself, why not just teach people everything that I just learned for free? Because I feel like the basics are stuff that you need to know, like your last name. Like, this is stuff that you should have been taught in school. If you own a vehicle, you need to know at least the basics. So I started doing that in June. I offered my workshops for free. So I made it a mission that by the end of the summer, I wanted to get on the news. I thought this idea was amazing. I was getting a lot of positive feedback from people in terms of how helpful this was for them, from the attendees specifically. So ended up emailing CP24, which is a news channel here, and I emailed them in mid-June, end of June, and I couldn't hear back from them for about a month. So I didn't give up. I used my stalking skills on Instagram, and I actually ended up finding the host of the breakfast show of CP24. I messaged him my idea. He absolutely loved it, got back to me right away. And 3 days later, we ended up going live on CP24 breakfast show. And that was a crazy experience. It was the first time I'm on the news. It was live as well. So if I screwed up, it would have just been already aired. So it was a lot of stress, but I didn't give up on myself. I had a lot of support from my friends. And after I finished that interview, I got a response back from the email I sent about a month ago. And they called me after that saying that they want me on the auto shop show of CP24. So again, 5 days after the phone call, I needed to be on air again. So I had to re-prepare myself for like a sit-down interview. And that experience was insane. It really helped start the girls mechanic team. It might sound easy the way I just described it, but throughout this whole thing, there's a lot of people that weren't supportive of it. I mean, women being in a mechanic industry, in a male dominated industry, is very hard. You feel like you're obligated to prove yourself, but I made sure that I would never do any of that stuff. I let kind of my success prove myself to other people. I know no one believed I could get on the news that quickly because it was just my first summer starting it, but I believed in it. I stayed persistent. I didn't give up. I didn't hear back from the email, so I reached out to somebody in a different platform. I did a lot of research as well, and I ended up getting exactly what I had in mind. So originally my workshops had about 7 signups and only 3 people showing up because they were free. Some people can just not show up. They're not losing any money. And after being on the news and going to universities, now I've taught over 100 people, specifically women. We focus on women just because that's not very accessible to them here. I even had a hard time finding a shop where I could go and learn. During my first internship, just for to give you an example, there was a mechanic shop close by to where I worked. I saw them working from my window, and I ended up going during my break to the shop, and I asked if I can foreshadow their work. This is way before the girls mechanic team. And I remember the secretary just kind of laughing in my face, and she saying, like, do you really want to learn like this? And I said, yeah, I do. So after that, like, just seeing her reaction to it, I just never went back to the shop. So that was a little bit unmotivating for me. It was just not helpful to know people were already judging me before I even started. And then another situation that happened to me when I first started the girls mechanic team is I went into the hardware shop to get mechanic gloves. And a customer heard me looking for them, and he looked at me. He was like, oh, you're looking for makeup gloves? And I just laughed, and I told him, no, I'm looking for mechanic gloves. And he was a little bit surprised. I don't know if he misheard me saying makeup gloves. I didn't even know makeup had their own specific gloves as well, but that was like some of the experiences that I was facing from other people. Even just holding the tools in the hardware store and seeing other people's facial expressions are pretty funny. I wish I had like a camera recorder on me to show you guys what I saw. But either way, I didn't let any of those people get to me. I actually ended up going from not being able to land a job because I had no connections and I didn't have enough experience to landing jobs now and getting job offers just because of the Girls Mechanic Team initiative. So the Girls Mechanic Team actually helped me a lot, and it helped me land my last 3 internships. And that's why I tell people, you know, your startup, even if it doesn't have like a successful result to it, for companies to see the journey you took to start it and the actual experience you get from starting your own thing is, to me, worth a million jobs. And I never let people's opinions stop me. I would be lying to tell you if that was an easy thing to do. But I always, whenever I work on a car, I always repeat in my head that, you know, you can do it. If a male can do it, that I can do it. And that's exactly what I ended up doing last week when I was doing my friend's oil change, because it was a really difficult car to work with. But I ended up getting it done. I never really let any of that stuff stop me. And going back to how your grades, if they matter or not, to me, yes, education is important, but it does have to be kind of combined with opportunities and to make the best out of it. And opportunities do come from networking. So at York University, I did go through a lot of networking events, and I met a lot of people that I've learned a lot from. You know, they might not have helped me land an internship, but they did teach me a lot of things from their own experience. So a huge mistake some people do when they go to networking events is they just talk about themselves and their experience, but they never realize how helpful other people's stories are. So that's something that I have learned throughout my, networking experiences. And that was basically the girls mechanic team. Now with COVID is probably the worst thing that's ever happened to me. It has completely stopped me from being able to run hands-on workshops. And it actually ruined two partnerships that I had to expand the girls mechanic team. And in a way, I was very unmotivated, but I didn't let that stop me. I sort of had to adapt to the situation itself. So I started to film everything I teach, and I made YouTube tutorials that are up on my channel now. And I'm currently also working on building an app to get my classes and workshop more accessible to people. So I'm trying to adapt slowly to how things are. And the lessons that I've learned from my own experience, because I sat down to think about what I've learned from everything that I've gone through. And the most important thing to me is to know what matters most to you and what are the things that you do that kind of get that for you. For example, for me, it was being happy is very important. And what made me happy was giving back to people. It was doing hands-on work and just being close to my family and my friends. And knowing what you want your end goal to be. So yes, saying I want to be successful is good, but you have to understand to be successful, the journey it takes to get to that point is a lot harder than you think it is. And you need to really enjoy working hard, and you just have to make sure you don't give up. So if you ever have a goal, an end goal, always put that in front of you. Look at the journey it takes to get there. Take the end point away and just focus on the journey itself, because the journey can change and the end goal can change depending on the journey you take. And that can be something you've never expected, and that could be the career that will make you the happiest. So just take it slow and always make sure you don't give up. The second thing is always continue to learn. Like till this day, yes, I can't do hands-on workshops, but even in the house itself, I've learned how to fix the bathtub leaking faucet, which saved me 150 Canadian in labor costs itself. I'm also filming YouTube videos on how to fix a broken fan in the washroom. So I'm just taking advantage of the free time I had this COVID. In the few months we were off during COVID. And the last thing, I just want to share quickly my screen as well with you. So I just want you to also remember that it doesn't matter what your gender is. It's a skill set that you acquire that really determines how good you are at something, and not your gender. So that's something I always remember when I'm working with cars, because I know it's a male-dominated industry, but at the end of the day, it's really the skill set that you acquire that determines how good you are at doing something. And another thing that I always like to say is to move forward, you have to give back. And a huge example of that is the girls mechanic team. The success it's brought to me has literally been just from giving back to the community. It's a lot of people start their startups and they have to push their startup to become successful. For me, the girls mechanic team has pushed itself to success just because it really focuses on giving back to the customer. And with anything you build, you really have to think of what is that providing to other people around you. And the last thing is, I always like to think of it as there's no force more powerful than a woman determined to rise. And that's something that I just like to keep in mind when I'm working. It just helps me work harder to get what I want. And the last thing, there's a few books that I would love to recommend for you guys. I'm not a huge fan of reading books, but those books have helped me a lot in the past few years. 48 Laws of Power, a lot of people don't agree with it just because it's very, it's extreme with the lessons it's trying to teach. but I do think it's helpful in a way or another. The Happiness Advantage has been a book which when I bought it through a time where I was very down and unmotivated, especially in the winter time. Like my mood absolutely changes here, but it really helps you stay positive and look at things in a positive perspective. And The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck just basically teaches you that people's opinion doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, you need to focus on what's beneficial to you and what your goals are. The Automatic Millionaire and Smart Women Finish Rich, they're the same author, and both of these books really teach you the basics of taking care of your finances, how to save money, what's the best options to save your money in. A lot of it are actually based on the states, so he gives links to where you can check your credit score report, what that even means, all that information in the US. So they'd be really helpful for you guys. And the last book relates a lot to what's happening today, which is Exploiting Chaos. It basically teaches you that to take advantage of chaotic times. And in this situation specifically, it's COVID. And the way I've done that with the Girls Mechanic team was adapting to moving everything to social media, because that's what everything is moving into. If you're a company that weren't prepared to do so, then a lot of those companies have shut down because of this specific situation. So instead of sitting during COVID and doing absolutely nothing, think of ways that you can help the situation that you're in. And that book gives you examples from history of the biggest companies that are out now and how they were initiated through times of chaos. So these are the books that I truly recommend for you to at least check out and take a quick look at. But to end this off, I have to say that I am thankful to be born in such a time where the road was paved for me by other women who were brave enough to kind of, recognize their worth. In a time, like if I would to come many years before this and try to start the Girls Mechanic team, it would be much harder. But now there's a community for women to feel empowered and to reach out to other women that can help them feel empowered and push them to do what their passion is. And I'm hoping to be empowering for you guys, and hopefully some of what I said today have taught you something or have helped motivate you in one way or another. But that's everything I have today, and I hope you guys have learned something. I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have. You can, I think, type them in the chat. I have it open now so I can see everything. And thank you again for, making the time to virtually be here and listen to my story.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Joanna.
No
that was great. I guess if anybody has any questions, as she said, you can type it in the Q&A or in the chat, and we'll monitor those. I'll start off. Well, hopefully some other people are thinking. But it seems like one of the common trends in your talk is that you're a go-getter. You're a little hustler.
Yes.
Make things
I don't take no for an answer, and that's so important. Like there's so many little details of not giving up, and I wish I can give you give you an example of everything that I've done. But no matter what your circumstances are, you have to get out of it and try to reach out to people, try to change the situation you're in. And there's a lot of people out there that are willing to help you. You just have to really keep going, keep trying.
So how do you find that motivation, right? It seems like you could just say, I'm an engineering student, and that would be enough, right? That's a big enough thing to take on in itself, let alone, I see all your fitness videos on Instagram. I see, you fixing things around the house, right? This is stuff that I've had to do around my house, and it takes me a day to figure it out, right? Like, it's not like any of this stuff is, a small task. So A, how do you find the motivation? And B, how do you find the time?
So really the main motivation was moving here as an immigrant and having no connections. Even my sister told me this, but when you don't have connections and you don't have work experience, you kind of have to build that for yourself. Because when you go out there and you meet people, you have absolutely nothing to show them. So when I built the Girls Mechanic team, it's the only thing that I bring to the table when I go to job interviews. It's the only thing that have taught me, all these years of work experience. I've learned it all through the Girls Mechanic team. I think the main motivation to me is being financially stable in life and knowing how important that is, because it's really expensive living in Canada. Everything is very pricey. And I made it one of my missions to also be stable in life. And the Girls Mechanic team, yes, I've given a lot of my workshops for free, because I do think those are, things that people need to learn without having to pay for them. I'm not always motivated. You know, you always get those times in the winter, specifically when you just don't feel like doing anything. And that's why I say the book, the Happiness Advantage, has really helped me a lot. Surround yourself with people that are doing good and that you can look up to, and they will really motivate you. And to me, that's been my sister. She has started her own company and has worked all her way up from absolutely nothing. She was here, she didn't really enjoy living in Toronto, so she ended up actually moving back home, and she did her absolute best to start her company, and she is now doing really well. And I'm learning a lot from her. Motivation like comes in many ways. You really have to write things down, keep looking at them, watch a lot of TED Talks, videos that can motivate you. Like those are just little things that I keep doing every now and then. And let me just share my screen actually, because somebody asked what my YouTube channel is, and I have that all on the last slide that I forgot to share. You can also feel free to email me or reach out to me with any questions that you guys have. I'm more than happy to answer. Even if you have any questions about any personal questions or any specific questions, I am more than happy to share that with you as well.
I'm wondering if you could maybe speak a little bit about, I guess, your entry to kind of the world of mechanics a little bit. So you said you went to the auto show and you got a job as a brand ambassador.
Yes.
And I think for most of us, who know what brand ambassadors are, we don't really take that even to be related whatsoever to mechanics, right? That seems to be more marketing, advertising, that kind of thing, or even modeling.
Yes.
So, how did you go about, if you could speak maybe about making that connection of going from that kind of loosely related thing where you're kind of doing marketing for an auto show to maybe kind of transitioning that into meeting somebody who can provide you with an internship in your field?
Yeah, so the International Auto Show, a friend of mine who's really into cars actually made me come with him to the show. And the job itself is, yes, a lot of people think, you have to look really good and that's the only way you land a job. But you really have to have a lot of knowledge in the cars when you are presenting them to people. Because when I was working, you will get some male attendees coming up to you to challenge you on things, to question you. And I remember one of the models was not, they just stopped making it, and he was convinced that that's not true. But so it's little things like that that just shows you, like, it doesn't matter what people think. Anyways, but yeah, the auto show itself, I never thought it would really get me in the automotive field. I knew that a lot of people into the automotive field would be attending it. The actual hands-on work and how I knew that I wanted to go into working on cars was because of a situation that happened to me when I was driving and I got a flat tire. I had to drive it across the street to the mechanic shop, and I stood right beside him when he did the entire job from scratch. And in my head, I'm like, this is so easy. Like, if I just need the equipment to do this. And I paid, I think, around 60 Canadian dollars to do it. And when I went home and I YouTubed it, and it was the easiest thing possible. Like, if you don't even have to have your own equipment, the gas station provides everything for you as well. But it's just little things like that that really motivated me. So when I took my car to the mechanic shop, after a few months, I was watching him even do some of the things, and I just saw how easy it was to do it. You don't need to be a man to do it. You don't need to be a specific gender to do it. All it takes is really the skill set and just having the confidence to know that you can do it. So that's how my hands-on work really went into the automotive, working on cars. And yeah, the auto shop show, the International Auto Show, I just went for it. Me and my friend were talking. I'm like, I want to land a job here. It really helped me. And just meeting people in general, because I've never been to a networking event before that too. So I went to speak to a manager, and I'm like, I really like cars. Obviously you lie at every interview in the beginning, but just because I didn't really have experience, but I was into cars a little bit, but I didn't know much of it yet. So she, had a few questions for me, and I managed to get by, and she liked me and hired me. And I worked again 2 years ago there. So it's still a place where I go to network with people, and there's a lot of resources now with COVID. I know it's a little bit harder, but you can still do it through like through online, and LinkedIn specifically was very helpful. I'm just checking the questions. You're shadowing people who are being taught. Do you think you were taught differently? So that's a really good question. My mechanic didn't treat me differently when he was teaching me. The first shop that I went to, the way that the secretary laughed in my face when I asked to foreshadow, that to me was not like a space that I wanted to be around. So yeah, do you think you were taught differently? No, the mechanic that I had, I was very lucky to have somebody that just treated me the same. He was very happy that I actually wanted to learn this stuff. So that's why I make sure with even the girls mechanic team workshops that I make sure that it's judgment-free zone. It's, you can make your mistakes. I still even make mistakes when I'm teaching, or when I'm, especially when you're under a stressful situation, you'll always forget. It's like learning how to do self-defense, but when the actual experience happens, you forget everything. So like over time and after a few experiences, you'll just be more confident slowly with it. And what's next for GMT? What do you? So the girls mechanic team is definitely something that I want to keep doing. The hands-on workshops, I think I'll forever have available for people. I am working on building an application that will bring my videos to different car brands and models, so that you'll have access to them at home, and you can watch them as you're working on your car. So that's what I have planned for the next few years. My happiness, you can see with my grades how much it affected my success. I think to me, just being happy made me even feel more motivated. So let's say I stayed at McMaster. I actually signed up for pole fitness there to see if I can find happiness in that aspect, but still it was so expensive, and I wasn't working with school, and I wasn't doing well, so I couldn't even afford to keep going in the classes. So I did my best. I know a lot of people say, education comes first. Doesn't matter if you're unhappy, you just have to finish it. It's 4 years. That is true to an extent. I have done my best. I have actually went through different channels to try to reach out to people to find happiness while I was at my first university. And one of them is the pole fitness I was telling you about. But financially, I just couldn't afford doing that. So when I moved closer to home, I was actually still able to work while going to school and still performing well. So happiness for me was a huge part of where I am today.
I see one question in the chat. I'm not sure, I think you kind of hinted at this a little bit, but are there any specific examples of being a female in the engineering field that affected you based on your gender?
Honestly, the biggest thing is just people's reactions to me. People will laugh a lot when I tell them what I do. It really takes a lot for them to take me seriously. I think being on the news has helped me a lot in terms of having to prove myself without actually having to prove myself. If I wasn't on the news, then till this day, people will always question what I do. I think especially people in older generations, they're not used to women being in this field. And it's mostly really, when people are actually stuck on the road and I stop to help them. And a lot of the men that actually are stuck, they look at me and they're like, no, I'm okay. Like they give me just a weird face of like, I'm fine, you're gonna help me. Like, and they just don't know that I have all the tools in my car. So it's really too bad for them at the end of the day. But the biggest thing has really just been people's reactions and feedback, even at the mechanic stores when I go buy equipment, teaching workshops and telling people what I do. Just some people are just very convinced that women cannot do this job. So I hope this answered the question. I can't see the questions anymore for some reason.
I just missed all the ones.
Oh, okay, I got it.
I think that's all of them. So unless anybody else has anything, I just want to say, hopefully for my students, particularly my LAS 241 students, I think a lot of what Joanna said probably relates to some of the readings that we're doing this week and some of the assignments that we did, specifically that goal setting assignment that we did at the beginning of the term. So hopefully you can see how some of that stuff kind of manifests itself a few years down the road for some of you, you know, focusing on your goals and the steps to get there, and, you know, adjusting how we judge certain situations and that kind of thing. So if nothing else, you all have Ms. Burgan's email address and her, the link to her Girls Mechanics Team YouTube channel.
I'll put it in the chat as well in case any of you have missed it.
Okay. And then, of course, if any of you, you know, have questions that come up later, you know, she's on social media, or you can reach out to me. I'm in fairly regular contact with Ms. Burgan. And so let's thank her for her time and her insight and her experiences. So thank you very much.
Thank you as well. I'm just writing everything down here.
Okay. And I'll just speak a little bit about the next talk that we have coming up, which is, I want to say October 21st. Let me just check. Yeah, October 21st. It's a Wednesday. So same thing, same time, 3 p.m. The link for that will be in the daily announcements, and I'll post that in my courses as well. And I know Charisse is going to share it with FYE classes and everything. And the title of that talk is Sports Team Names and Social Justice, Who Gets a Say? So that's going to be a talk hosted by Associate Professor of Philosophy from Simon Fraser University. And her name's Dr. Holly Anderson. And she'll just be speaking about, you know, what should we do about the Cleveland Indians and the Washington Redskins, and the Chicago Blackhawks, and those kind of things. You know, who gets a say in whether we keep or get rid of those names, and why are they problematic, and for whom are they problematic? So that's coming up next month, and then I'll share some details about the November talk when we get to that point. So thank you very much to everybody for attending, and thank you again to Jowana Burgan for sharing her time and experiences with us.
Thank you so much. Take care and have a great week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.